Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Rabbi Cass. I'm a sofer in Muncie, New York. You can find me online at sofercenter.com. So today I want to make what I'm going to call a part 2 of my video, which was how to put up a mezuzah. Part 1 video was essentially just talking about what types of cases to use, indoors, outdoors, and what type of materials to use in order to hold up the mezuzah. You can watch that video. I'll put the link in the description. That video probably will go before this video. Part 2, today's video is basically going to be talking about the actual putting up the mezuzah. So, and like I mentioned previously, putting up the mezuzah and how to determine which is the right side of the door is not something which is so black and white. Sometimes doors which you think would be on the right side going in, that will change if there's another doorway, another door leading into the room. Or if you have two rooms, one is a larger room, one is a smaller room, whether one is a more important room, which way the door swings, or the flow of the foot traffic through the house. These are all determining factors which could change the direction of the mezuzah, which you might think that it goes on the right side, but it might have to go on the other side depending on other factors. So assuming you know where this mezuzah needs to go, and how do you know that? Because either you verified it with a rabbi, or you had a sofer come down to the house, or we did it online. We can do a video consultation like I mentioned also earlier, and you know where the mezuzah is going. So now you're ready to put up the mezuzah. So what mezuzah are you putting up? So it's important to mention to have a kosher scroll. So you could do everything right. You could put it in the right case. You could put it up in the right spot and verify everything. But if the mezuzah was purchased from a non-reputable source, then it's all for nothing. So you got to make sure you have a kosher scroll, which means don't buy it on Amazon and eBay. Chances are it's probably, I mean, I can't say anything for sure, but my experience with eBay and Amazon has been that they sell poor quality mezuzahs, and I have a separate video on that about buying tefillin and mezuzahs from eBay and Amazon. Also some Judaica stores that they're at best minimally kosher, many times outright puzzle. So be careful with that. Make sure you have a good mezuzah. And the mezuzah should be put into the case by somebody who knows what they're doing, an expert, because I can't tell you how many times I get mezuzahs like this in the mail to check, and I think it's just a 3-inch scroll, which is not so uncommon. But in reality, what it is it's really a 4-inch scroll that somebody folded in order to fit into a 3-inch scroll. And obviously, if you have the mezuzah hanging on the door like this, and half the mezuzah is upside down, it's obviously not considered kosher. And then you have also another thing to deal with, all the cracks which developed along the crease. Okay, so it might seem obvious to a lot of people, but putting the mezuzah inside the case, or making sure there is a mezuzah inside the case. I've had instances where I've gone to a house to take down the mezuzahs for checking and to bring them back to the office to find 10 or 12 cases empty. And I'm like shaking. I don't even know like what to tell the person. How do I call somebody up who thinks they had mezuzahs on their doors for years and they're all empty? And so like by me, my practice in the office is if I have a case that doesn't have a mezuzah inside, I will not put the plug on it. And if I give somebody a case, let's say they change cases and they want to keep the extra cases for just to keep around the house, I won't put the plug in it and I won't put the back on it. I'll either tape it on separately in a way that you could see and it's obvious that there's nothing inside. Other things that could go wrong would be mezuzahs being put inside the cases upside down. And then there's also some mezuzahs which, depending on where they're going, have to be double wrapped. Let's say mezuzahs for doors that are inside bedrooms have to be double wrapped. So because there's all these different factors that you have to take into consideration, it's best if you buy the mezuzah already ready for what your needs and where you're going to be getting it, where it's going to be being put from a sofer, so that way you know you have a good mezuzah. You know that it was put in the case properly, wrapped. If it needs to be double wrapped, wrapped properly, put in the case right, and you are ready now. You have your mezuzah, a good mezuzah, ready to go, and you know where it needs to go because you verified that also. That's where we're up to right now. Okay, so really this video is 4 minutes already, 4 minutes long, but I have to say these things because you can have a kosher scroll and putting it in the wrong place, or putting it in the right place but having a non-kosher scroll, and if they don't come together, you're not doing the mitzvah. So having a kosher proper scroll, putting it on the right place, they are very, very important. So now I'm going to be talking about actually putting up the mezuzah. So who could put up a mezuzah? So the answer to that is basically it's any man or woman over the age of bar bas mitzvah, meaning somebody that has the obligations for the mitzvahs, to put up the mezuzah. Now, technically, it's supposed to be the owner of the house, but if the owner wants to designate somebody else to do it for them, then they're allowed to do that. And it might seem obvious to you, but I've had situations where painters have taken down mezuzahs for people while they were painting and put them back up. And again, only somebody who is obligated in the commandment of having a mezuzah is allowed to put up the mezuzah. If you have a painter take down your mezuzah for painting and then putting it back up, you have to go then take it down and then put it back up again. These are scenarios that people just don't think about, but I've come across it. Like I say, stories from the trenches. Another story I'll tell you basically is actually one of my neighbors. He moved in a couple of doors down from me, and right away I said to him, so, you know, if you need mezuzahs, I'm happy to help you, let me know. He says, yeah, I need mezuzahs. He told me how many he needed. I dropped them off by his house. A few days, weeks went by, the mezuzahs weren't put up. I kept on messaging him. I said, do you need help? I'll come, I'll do it for you. Just, you know, it's important to have the mezuzahs up. Anyway, so eventually one day they went up, and then we went to them for a meal on Shabbos, and I said to him, I said, oh, I see you got the mezuzahs up. So he points to his 11-year-old son. He says, yeah, I think his name was Nehemiah. He says, Nehemiah did it for us. So I look at him, I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay, he's not bar mitzvah. You got to do it again now. So people don't realize you know, these are things which you have to take into consideration. Okay, so like I said, over bar bas mitzvah, there's no time of the day that has to be done. You could put up a mezuzah by night, you could put up a mezuzah by day. Both men and women have the obligation to have a mezuzah, and assuming you're putting up the mezuzah in a place that requires a bracha, you're gonna make the bracha. So what is the bracha? The bracha is Baruch ah-tah ah-sher ah-sher ki-deh-shah-noo beh-mitz-voh-tahv lik-boh-ah Mezuzah. Now, I didn't say Hashem's name. If you want, I'll put in the description the actual blessing over there, and you'll be able to read it from there. Now, it's important to realize that not all doors require a blessing. So when you're putting up your house of mezuzahs, the first door typically that people do will be the front door. Now, what you do is you make a bracha on the front door, and you have in mind the rest of the mezuzahs in the house. And you try not to make any interruption from when you made the blessing on the front door until you finish all of them. Now, it's a common misconception that mezuzahs only actually have to go on the front door. Now, the truth is they have to go on all of the doors, because if you look in the pasuk, it says Mezuzahs beisecha, the doorposts of your house, which is a plural. Every single door needs to have a mezuzah, aside from there are some exceptions, like a bathroom and things like that, and certain sizes of the rooms also can negate the fact. But again, these are you have to talk to your rabbi or sofer to figure out if that particular room needs a mezuzah. Obviously, mezuzahs will never need, but there's sometimes questions. You have, rooms before mezuzah, where sometimes people are dressed, sometimes they're not dressed. All of these have to be, taken into consideration, and you have to ask your rabbi. Again, all the halachas, the laws that we're describing right now, are assuming you know that this door needs a mezuzah. Okay, so assuming, again, we're at the place right now where you have a good kosher scroll, and you know that this door needs a mezuzah, and you know which side of the door the mezuzah needs to go on. How high do you put the mezuzah? So again, that's something also you need to verify. Depending on the door, there are circumstances where this will change. But generally speaking, I'm only mentioning this because I've seen people make the mistake, like on kids' bedrooms, where they want the child to be able to reach it, so they put the mezuzah like lower, halfway down in order for the child to be able to reach it. And that's obviously not kosher, because we know that generally speaking, the mezuzah cannot go lower than the mezuzah cannot go, I'm not going to say generally speaking, the mezuzah should not go lower than the bottom of the top third. So let's say an average door is 80 inches on average. It means the bottom of the mezuzah should not go lower than 26 inches, which, by the way, is already considered low. And I know, because I put up mezuzah so often, that when I'm standing in a doorpost, my shoulder comes to about 23 inches from the top of the door. Okay? So now I put up this makeshift post over here just to give you an idea, because we're going to be discussing putting up the mezuzah, the height. So imagining this is a proper door, obviously. This is the doorpost over here. So 26 inches would probably be somewhere around here, which is already considered quite low. Now, some people, they want to put it, by the bottom of the top third, exactly by the bottom of the top third. And by a kid's bedroom, that's what I would do if somebody wants it to be as much as possible within reach for the child. But I'll see sometimes like doorsteps, let's say front doors, or sometimes from the garage to the house, you have like a step down or a step up, and people, they work the measurement and they're not measuring properly, but they know the general height of the mezuzah, and then they're putting it up exactly at the bottom of the top third, but because they're standing a step down, one second, because they're standing a step down, then the mezuzah ends up being, instead of exactly at the bottom of the top third, it ends up being a couple of inches lower. Now that's not uncommon. Very often when I come to a front door that has a step up, or a garage to the house that has a step up, I'll find that if somebody was trying to be specific, putting it exactly at the bottom of the top third, I will find that mezuzah be a couple of inches too low. So because of that, when I'm putting up mezuzahs, I always follow the shoulder height rule, which means if I'm coming to my doorpost like this, I'm always going to put the mezuzah about an inch or so above my shoulder, which will probably put the mezuzah about the bottom of the mezuzah to be about 22 inches from the top of the door, assuming you're on an 80-inch door. Now, sometimes you don't have a proper doorpost to put the mezuzah, and I'm going to show you an example for that right now. How do you put the mezuzah? I'm going to show you right now. Okay, I'm giving you a little bit of tour from my office. So this is actually the door coming into my office, okay? So that's, I don't know if you could see, this is coming in. That's the gigantic mezuzah that I wrote for myself. Now sometimes the door works like this. Okay, so sometimes you have a situation where there's no place to put the mezuzah within the actual door frame. So what do you do in an instance like that, like this, where let's say the door opens like this, assuming that's the going out and this is the right side coming in? What do you do with the mezuzah? So then you'll put the mezuzah on the molding going like that, tilted towards the door. Technically speaking, as long as the mezuzah is within a tefach, which is a handbreadth, which is 3 to 4 inches of the actual door, it's still considered kosher. Now, in any instance, we want to try to have a mezuzah. The mezuzah needs to be in front of the door. Now, it happens to be in this situation over here, when you open the door, you do have a place to put the mezuzah on the back, on the I don't know if you could see that, right? On the, behind the door, so to speak. Now, whether you put it here or you put it here, makes no difference. It's all kosher. If you put it here, it's better because, I mean, it sticks out more over here. It's more of a likelihood to get knocked down. So over here is always a better, safer option. And now there is a halacha actually where it's written that the mezuzah should not be put behind the door. The mezuzah should be actually in front of the door. But in this instance, because when you open the door, let's say sometimes you're in like a dangerous neighborhood, or your mezuzahs are being stolen. People live in places like this sometimes. So then we put the mezuzah behind the door in order that it shouldn't be defaced or stolen. So you put it like that, just like that. Now, there is a halacha that the mezuzah should not be put behind the door. And really the instance that that's talking about is a situation where, imagine this. The way the mezuzah is actually put on this door over here. Can you see that? That's the right side coming into the office. Now if I close this door, instead of putting the mezuzah where it was on the outside, I'm going to put it right over here. Now that is a problem. Why? Because I don't see the mezuzah when the door is closed from the outside, and I don't see the mezuzah from the inside either, because when I open the door, imagine that's there. When you open the door, the mezuzah is behind the door, so you'll never the mezuzah is, that's what's called behind the door, and that's really supposed to be avoided at all costs. But again, if you can't, then that's also would be considered kosher. But behind the door in this situation, where you actually you open the door, and when you open the door, you're actually able to see the mezuzah. Okay, so that's not really technically considered behind the door. I hope you understood what I'm trying to say. Okay, so now, and as far when we're talking about the height of the mezuzah, it could go as high as with, let's say, on an 80-inch door. It could go as close to the top of the lintel, but it has to have at least a tefach, which is let's say 4 inches from the top of the door. Sometimes you'll see houses where let's say this is the top of the door frame, the mezuzah is all the way at the top. It needs to have at least 4 inches of space from the top of the mezuzah to the top of the doorpost. Okay, so you have to keep that in mind. As far as putting it up straight versus slanted, Sephardim typically put it straight. Everybody else, Chassidim Ashkenazim, will put it up slanted. I'll go into the reasons why in another video. Another thing that you have to take into consideration is what do you do on a very wide doorpost? So generally speaking, on the outside of the house, we typically put it within a tefach, which is again 3-4 inches, depending on different opinions, on the outermost tefach of the house. So let's say on a regular door, it's not such a concern, but let's say on garages where they have sometimes like a very wide doorpost. So sometimes you see the mezuzah more deeper in, closer to the garage door. It really needs to come more to the exterior. And the reason for that is because the mezuzah is a shmirah, and the further out it is, the more of the house it gives the shmirah for. That's what's brought down. So it should be on the outermost tefach of the doorpost. Sometimes you'll see on front doors where they have the side lights. This is not uncommon, where the front door is where people will put the mezuzah instead of on the post right by the door. They'll put it on the side light all the way on the right, and again that would not be considered kosher because the mezuzah is not within a tefach 3 or 4 inches of the actual door. Okay, door or the entrance way. So you have to make sure that that's not going to be a problem. And one other thing I want to mention, which I didn't mention in the other video, was when you use tape, you have to make sure that the surface is clean, and otherwise the tape will not stick well to the surface. And if your doorpost is too narrow and it doesn't allow you to tilt the mezuzah or to put it on an angle, then of course the mezuzah can be put straight. Now, like I mentioned earlier in the video, one of the reasons why I say you should have a sofer prepare the mezuzah for you is one of the reasons is to make sure that the mezuzah is not put in upside down. Assuming now the mezuzah you have is in the case right, it's important to put the mezuzah upright. One of the ways you could identify almost always is there'll be a shin on the case. That's you know, right opposite where you'll find the shakai and the mezuzah. Then the direction of the shin will be an indication on how and which would be what's considered upright, putting the mezuzah upright. And last but not least, I want to mention when is the time to put up the mezuzah. When you're renting a house, you have 30 days according to most opinions. Some say that if you sign a contract, you have to start, which means you can't be thrown out. You can't be asked to leave. You have a requirement even on day 1 having a mezuzah, even by rental, although most authorities don't agree with that. So day 30 is when the chiyuv would start, when you can make the bracha. When you buy a house, the requirement starts day 1 that you move in. Some authorities actually hold that if you buy the house and you intend to move in a month, but you keep you're slowly bringing things in and you're storing things there, then you would say that your obligation starts when you start storing things there. Although most opinions will hold that your obligation only starts the night that you're actually going to move in. Now, I'll tell you from my experience, it's best to put up the mezuzahs after the movers have left and all the big things are done being moved around, and then you'll put up the mezuzahs. I had once where somebody actually asked me to come. He wanted everything to be done, like, you know, the movers to be done, and then I was putting up the mezuzah. I came at the time that I was supposed to come. The movers were delayed a couple of hours, so I had no choice but to put up the mezuzahs. And while I was putting up the mezuzahs, the movers had arrived, and by the time I left, they were still moving things in, and I was on my way out, and you know, one of the boys runs over to me and says, "You forgot to put a mezuzah on my door." Well, I knew I put a mezuzah on every door in the house, so I went back up to look around, and basically this boy's room had like a sitting room before the room, and the movers are moving a couch in, and they knocked the mezuzah off. So once the movers are done, once all the big things are done being moved around, once all the work is done in the house, sometimes people are doing work in the house, mezuzahs could get knocked off or things like that. So once the dust has settled, that's when, and the night you're about to sleep in, that's when the mezuzah, the mitzvah of the mezuzah starts. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I covered all the information that I wanted to cover, and if you have any other questions or maybe things that I missed, you can leave them in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, and hit the notifications, that way the bell, that way you'll get notifications when new videos come out. And of course, like I always say, the more subscribers, the more likes, the more it encourages me, and the more I see the need for making more of these types of videos. So be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you by the next video. Take care. Bye.